Let's add an enemy into the scene now. Up until this point, we have the player just running around more of as an adventure game. Let's go ahead and go to our 3D game kit, go down to prefabs, and we have a folder called characters, and we have different objects inside of the enemies. We're going to choose the chomper. If you left click and drag the chomper into the scene, we'll place one outside on the other side of the river. So the very first part will be simply a more of an exploration, learn how to use the keys, jumping, getting to here, and then after that point can be your first interaction with the enemy character. So this character, when you place it inside the scene, if you go into the inspector over here, you're going to notice a couple of options that are available. There is a damage amount, maximum hit points is 1, invulnerability time, hit angle, hit forward rotation. You have callbacks for events for a lot of different ones that you can actually do checks for. For instance, on death, you could play a loot pickup, you could do particles that get played, a lot of different things. When we go down to the player itself, inside the player, it's very similar setup to the player character here, is that they've got a body, a skeleton, then different attack routes, and the source for the audio. What we want inside the chomper as well is the player scanner. The scanner is just going to say how big of a radius are we actually looking for. There's a detection radius that's right here. So on this player, if I wanted to actually detect the amount, so that I want to be able to see the amount that the player is, you can turn on the gizmos at the top, and you can see that the player can actually see everything almost behind the player as well. If we wanted to adjust the radius for how far before he detects, and if we wanted to adjust the detection angle before he notices here. So if we want, we can actually take this to say 100, and then the radius we'll set to 5. Now by setting it this way, what we're basically doing is allowing the player to get into the view and out of the view a little bit easier, so the animal's not just going to see her instantly and run and keep running towards her. Alright, so if we have that inside the scene, we push play. We'll notice that we can go over there, so we see our the creature over on the other side right here. And again, during testing phases, I would definitely say place the player and character right next to each other so that you can just simply test with it right there. So the player is in a idle position. Now the player recognizes him, but because I can actually go right outside of that range, the player goes back into the idle position. So this one requires the player to be really close before they get to the moving stage. Now notice the moving stage isn't actually moving the player yet. So we want to push Control P to unplay. We want to make sure that we actually build a Nav Mesh. That way we can actually use the navigational mesh to move the character around within the scene. Before we do that though, let's go ahead and place the character as a test. We're going to place the character on the other side here. And then we'll rotate the character slightly to the side. There we go. So for testing purposes, this will be a lot easier in terms of getting things set up. We can just turn to the side and then test with. All right, so at this point, you've got the player character in. We have our scanner set to a smaller radius. And then we have the controller and the Nav Mesh agent set. Just by default, it's already on it. So now we just need to create the Nav Mesh that goes across the available walking area.